Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Indian Polity series. So today we'll be looking at the preamble to the Indian Constitution. Before even moving on to start the chapter, let us understand what a preamble is. A preamble is an introductory statement that sets the tone and outlines the broad goals of the subsequent document. Now, having this in mind, let's look at the preamble to the Indian Constitution. What does the preamble to the Indian Constitution contain? The preamble to the Indian Constitution embodies the entire essence of the Constitution. It is like an introduction and the preface of the document. It explains the purpose and objectives with which the Indian Constitution has been written. Which item or document proposed by Jawaharlal Nehru became the preamble to the Indian Constitution? The Objectives Resolution was the initial document that laid the foundation for the preamble of the Indian Constitution. It was moved by Jawaharlal Nehru on 13 December 1946 in the Constituent Assembly and was unanimously passed on 22nd January 1947. Let's look at the text of the preamble to the Indian Constitution. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political liberty of thought, expression, belief, and faith and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote amongst them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt and enact and give to ourselves this Constitution. Having read the preamble, let's look at some of the key points. So it says that India would be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. It's important to note here that the words socialist and secular were initially not a part of the preamble to the Indian Constitution and were added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. Similarly, under fraternity, the word integrity was initially not a part of the Indian preamble and it was added to the preamble by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. The preamble clearly says that the date of adoption and enactment was the 26th of November 1949. This is very important. And who was the Constitution for? It was for the people of India. What precise information can we gather about the Indian state from the preamble? The preamble clearly says that the Indian state is a sovereign nation, which means there is no outside authority that India is anyway dependent on, and India has the authority to carry out its own functions and affairs. India can either acquire a foreign territory or cede a part of its territory in favor of a foreign state. Socialist. Before moving on to what is in the Constitution, what does socialism mean? Under socialism, the means of production, such as machinery, tools, factories, are owned and controlled by the community or the state rather than by private individuals or corporations. Socialism is based on the idea of collective or public ownership and aims to achieve a more equal distribution of goods and services. Having said that, let's look at what the preamble says. The word socialist was not a part of the Indian preamble to begin with. It was added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976, and here we want to achieve a socialistic pattern of society through democratic means. The Indian brand of socialism is democratic socialism, which holds faith in a mixed economy where the private and public sectors work in tandem. Indian socialism is a mix of Marxism and Gandhism, leaning heavily towards Gandhian socialism. Secular. The word secular was also not a part of the Indian preamble to begin with and was added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. Being secular does not mean that India is a non-religious or an anti-religious country. It means that we have the same respect and we have vowed to protect all religions inside the country. We have adopted a positive concept of secularism. The state in itself does not follow any religion and also shall not discriminate against the citizens in any way on the basis of religion. Democracy. What does a democracy mean? Democracy is a system of government in which the power is vested in the people and exercised by the people directly or through freely elected representatives. And India is a representative parliamentary democracy where the rulers are elected by the people. We not only envision a political democracy but also a social and an economic democracy. Finally, the preamble says that the Indian state is a republic. This means that the head of a state is an elected representative and not a hereditary monarch. Political sovereignty is vested in the people and not in the hands of a single individual like a king. We can see this in the United Kingdom. Absence of privileged class and hence all public offices are open to all citizens without discrimination. What does the preamble imply about the source of authority of the Constitution, the nature of the Indian state, the objectives of the Constitution, and the date of adoption? Take a minute to recall all of this since we have already looked at the preamble. The preamble says that the Constitution derives its authority from the people of India. It declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. It says that the objectives are to ensure justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. It says that the Constitution was adopted and enacted on the 26th of November 1949. Let us look into the objectives mentioned in the Indian Constitution through the preamble one by one. Justice. The concept of justice embraces three different forms in social, economic, and political. Social justice refers to the equal treatment of all citizens without any distinction or discrimination based on caste, color, race, religion, sex, and so on. It means the absence of special privileges to any section of the society. Economic justice denotes non-discrimination among the people on the basis of economic factors. A combination of social justice and economic justice is known as distributive justice. Political justice implies that all citizens should have equal political rights, equal access to all such political offices, and equal voice in the government. It is important to note that these ideals of justice have been taken from the Russian Revolution of 1917. Liberty. It refers to the absence of restraints on the activities of the individuals and at the same time provides opportunities for development of the individuals in the country. The liberty conceived by our preamble or the fundamental rights is not absolute but qualified. This means that while we guarantee liberty to all the people of India, there are certain restrictions in place to ensure that no untoward incidents happen. The ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity have been taken from the French Revolution. Equality. It refers to the absence of special privileges to any section of the society. It also provides for adequate opportunities for all individuals without any discrimination. We'll look at all of these objectives in deep when we move on to chapters such as fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. Fraternity. It refers to a sense of brotherhood. The preamble says that fraternity has to ensure two separate things. One is dignity of the individual, which is the basic enabler for all things to come, and then the unity and integrity of the nation. Again, important to note that the word integrity was not initially a part of the preamble and was added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. Who said that the preamble is like the horoscope of our constitution or the horoscope of our sovereign democratic republic? Dr. K.M. Munshi, who summarized the preamble as the most precious part of the Constitution, the soul of the Constitution, and a key to the Constitution, and also went further to call it a jewel set in the Constitution. Pandit Thakur Das Bhargava, who described the preamble as a keynote to the Constitution. Ernest Barker, is the preamble actually a part of the Indian Constitution? We said that it's an introduction or a preface document to the actual Indian Constitution. But is it a part of the Indian Constitution? Yes. Let's see how this evolved over a series of cases in the Supreme Court of India. In the Berubari Union case of 1960, the Supreme Court held that the preamble is a key to the minds of the makers of the Constitution, but that the preamble is not an integral part of the Indian Constitution. In the Keshwananda Bharati case of 1973, the Supreme Court held that the preamble is a part of the Indian Constitution. Finally, reiterating the same, in the LIC of India case of 1995, the Supreme Court held that the preamble is an integral part of the Indian Constitution. Important points to note here: the preamble is neither a source of power to the legislature nor a prohibition upon the powers of the legislature. It is also non-justiciable, which means that these provisions cannot be enforced in a court of law directly. Is the Indian preamble amendable? The topic of amendability of the Indian preamble first arose in the Keshwananda Bharati case of 1973. The Indian Supreme Court held that the preamble can be amended under Article 368 of the Constitution, subject to the condition that no amendment is done to the basic structure. The concept of basic structure involves a lot many topics that are considered to be sacrosanct to the Indian Constitution, and these cannot be removed by any legislative or parliament in India. We'll have a look at that in the future chapters. The preamble has been amended only once so far in 1976 by the Constitutional Amendment Act, and we have already seen that 3 new words were added to the preamble by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. These words are socialist, secular, and integrity. Let's also have a look at the meaning of a direct democracy and the 4 devices of direct democracy. A direct democracy is one in which the people exercise their supreme power directly, as in the case of Switzerland. India would fall under the category of an indirect democracy, where we the people elect our representatives to the government. There are four devices of direct democracy that we need to know about. Referendum. It is a procedure whereby a proposed legislation is referred to the electorate for settlement by their direct votes. Initiative is a method by means of which the people can propose a bill to the legislature for enactment. Recall. Recall is a method by means of which the voters can remove a representative or a public officer before the expiry of his term when he fails to discharge his duties properly. Plebiscite is a method of obtaining the opinion of the Indian people on any issue of a matter of public importance. It is generally used to solve territorial disputes. That is all for today. Let us have a look at the Union of India in the next chapter.